The letter that came with no name, Keanu Reeves had always walked through life with a quiet humility that made people wonder if he truly understood just how deeply he was loved. Not for his fame, not for his movies, but for the way he carried pain, like a sacred story, and joy like a borrowed blessing. He was in Rome, a city he had avoided for years, not because he didn't like it, but because of a memory that had haunted him. It was where his sister had taken her last breath, surrounded by stone angels and stained glass, after years of battling a rare illness that even the best doctors couldn't tame. He had come now for a quiet reason, something unplanned, something unscheduled. He was supposed to be on a break. No interviews, no films, no fans, just silence. That's what he wanted. Silence and maybe a little meaning, the kind you don't find on red carpets or movie sets. But life has a way of showing up when you're not ready. It began with a letter that had no name. It was slipped under the door of his hotel room at dawn, not through the reception, not with a knock, just a whisper of paper that waited to be found. The envelope was handmade, sealed with red wax, old-fashioned. Inside, a message written in delicate handwriting. A man of quiet truth must meet the man of quiet faith. The time is now. Come to the steps before the basilica at sunrise. Bring only your heart. Keanu read it twice. There was no signature, no explanation, just a feeling that clung to his chest. He stared at the ceiling. For a long time, normally he would have brushed it off. A fan, maybe, or someone trying to sell a story. But there was something different about it, something real, something that pulled at a thread inside him that had not been touched in years. As the sky turned, from black to pale gold, Keanu walked toward the Vatican. He wore simple clothes, his beard unshaven, a cap pulled low. No one recognized him, and that was a blessing. The streets were almost empty. There was a softness in the air, as if the world was still waking up, not ready yet to judge or demand. The basilica rose in the distance like a ship of stone, and as he reached the wide marble steps, he paused. A man was already there. Dressed in plain white robes, not the official kind, not the polished grandeur you'd expect, just soft linen, worn like it had been handed down through time. He was sitting on the fourth step, his back straight, hands resting gently on his knees. He looked up as Keanu approached, and his eyes were not those of a stranger. They were kind. They were searching. Keanu hesitated. "Are you the one who sent the letter?" The man smiled faintly. Some letters write themselves. That answer should have confused him, but instead it grounded him. "Who are you?" Keanu asked, a little quieter. "I'm a man who believes the world can still change," the man replied. "And you are a man who has already changed more than you know." Keanu sat beside him. Something about the moment felt sacred. Not religious, not ceremonial. Just sacred in a way that made the air feel heavier, warmer. "What do you want from me?" Keanu asked, eyes scanning the empty courtyard. "I want you to remember," the man said. "I want you to remember the promise you made long ago, to your sister, to yourself." And that's when Keanu froze. How could this man know? Keanu hadn't told anyone about that promise. Not publicly, not even in passing. He had whispered it to his sister's ear in the final hours of her life. She had been barely conscious, her breath thin and broken. He had held her hand and said, "I promise I'll keep looking for good, even when it hurts, even when I don't understand." He stared at the man in disbelief. "Who are you?" he repeated. The man smiled again, but this time there was a sadness in it. "The one you came to see," he said quietly. "I am Robert Prevost." Keanu blinked. He had heard the name. Everyone had. The newly elected pope. The man from the mission fields of Peru who had spent most of his life feeding orphans, healing wounded rebels, and refusing power until it found him anyway. The world had been stunned when he was chosen. He wasn't the favorite, not even the second or third choice. But somehow, his name had risen, like a whisper above noise. But what stunned Keanu wasn't the name. It was the man's presence. This wasn't the Pope he'd seen in media images. This wasn't the man in embroidered robes, waving to crowds. This was someone else entirely. This was the man before the title, the soul behind the curtain. Why me? Keanu finally asked, voice trembling. Robert looked toward the horizon where the sun was climbing slowly. Because you're not afraid of silence, he said. Because you've touched more hearts with your kindness than with your fame. And because the world listens when you speak softly. I need that voice. Keanu didn't know what to say. 100 questions raced through his mind. What did this man want him to do? Was this a call to something spiritual, political, global, or was it something else altogether? Before he could ask, Robert leaned in and whispered something in Keanu's ear. Just a few words, and Keanu Reeves, the man who had faced loss and pain and public life without breaking, felt tears rise to his eyes like they had not in years. He looked at Robert, heart pounding, lips parted in stunned silence. How do you know that? He whispered. Robert simply placed a hand on his shoulder. Because I heard it in prayer, he said. And I think it's time you heard it too. Keanu tried to speak, but no words came, just a single tear that traced the line of his cheek, and as the bell tower rang out in the distance, echoing across the holy city, Keanu realized this moment would change everything. But he didn't know how. Not yet. He only knew one thing. The world was about to witness something they had never seen before. The whisper that stirred the storm. The day after Keanu Reeves met Robert Prevost on the steps of the Basilica, the world remained unaware. No news cameras had captured the moment. No tweets, no headlines, no fan photos. It was as if the universe had wrapped that encounter in silence, protecting its meaning from being diluted by noise. Keanu returned to his hotel without speaking a word to anyone. He didn't touch his phone. He didn't order food. He sat by the window as Rome turned golden and shadowed, playing a memory over and over in his mind. The whisper that Pope Robert had leaned in and spoken. Those words echoed like thunder in a cave. They weren't cryptic. They were specific. Too specific. She left something for you. Under the olive tree. Keanu didn't sleep that night. He sat awake trying to understand how the Pope knew about the olive tree. It was where his sister had asked to be brought when she knew the end was near. Not the one in their hometown, but the one near the Vatican gardens, a place she had visited only once but had spoken about with reverence. She had called it the place where her heart felt quiet. She had made Keanu promise to scatter a part of her ashes there, and he had. Silently, privately. It wasn't something he had shared with anyone, not even the priests who had allowed him to visit the private garden that day. But now, after all these years, someone was telling him that she left something for him there. The next morning, Keanu walked without a map. No entourage, no translator, no assistant. Just a sense of direction guided by memory and instinct. When he reached the rusted iron gate near the side of the Vatican grounds, he was surprised to find it slightly ajar. Normally it would be locked, but today it swung open as if waiting for him. He passed through with hesitant steps. The garden was still. Birds sang softly in the distance. The wind brushed through tall cypress trees like a whisper of old prayers. And then he saw it, the olive tree. Its twisted bark looked like a face turned in eternal mourning. Beneath its branches, sunlight poured down like liquid gold. And there, nestled between two stones near the roots, was a small wooden box. Keanu knelt down, heart pounding. He reached out and lifted it slowly. The wood was smooth, worn by time, with a carving on the top. 3 initials burned into the surface. LMR, his sister's initials. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside, wrapped in faded blue fabric, was a letter. He unfolded it carefully, afraid the paper might disintegrate. The handwriting was hers, delicate, slanted, like the way she used to write on birthday cards. Dear Keanu, if you're reading this, then somehow the impossible has happened. I'm gone, and yet, you're here. I asked someone I trusted, to deliver this only when you were ready. I knew you wouldn't believe in signs, not easily. But if you're holding this, then maybe you've started to believe again. You gave me strength when I had none. You never let me feel like I was dying. You made me feel alive, even in the pain. But you stopped living after I left. I felt it. I knew it. So here is my final gift to you. I want you to do something that scares you. Something that heals the world. Not with noise, but with your kindness. Because the world needs your voice. And more than that, it needs your silence. Your truth. You don't need to know the how yet. Just say yes when it comes. Trust that I am with you. Keanu sat motionless, the letter pressed against his chest. His eyes shut tight as memories flooded him. The way she used to laugh even when her body was failing. The way she used to quote poetry while hooked to machines. And the way she had believed, not just in God, not just in love, but in him. Her brother. Her safe place. He stayed there for hours until the sun began to fall. As he stood to leave, he noticed someone watching from a distance. The figure stepped closer. It was Robert again, not dressed in white this time, but in dark clothes, blending into the garden like a shadow. You found it, he said softly. Keanu nodded, unable to speak. The world is in a fragile place, Robert said, voice steady. People are losing faith, not just in God, but in goodness, in each other. And I believe you were meant to help change that. Keanu stared at him, still overwhelmed. I'm not a prophet. I'm not holy. I'm just a man trying to survive. Precisely, Robert replied. That's why it has to be you. There was a silence that followed. It wasn't empty. It was heavy with a decision waiting to be made. What are you asking me to do? Keanu finally asked. Robert didn't answer directly. Instead, he handed Keanu a small leather pouch. Inside is a coin, an old one. A symbol, Robert explained. Take it with you, and wait. The call will come in 7 days. Keanu looked down at the pouch and then back at the man who had just turned his world inside out. And when it does, he asked. Robert placed a hand over his own heart. Then you will have to choose. Between comfort and calling, between silence and voice, between healing yourself or healing the world. Keanu's breath caught in his throat. He nodded slowly, unsure of what any of this meant. But somewhere deep inside him, something had shifted. Like a rusted door unlocking after years of being jammed shut. As he walked away from the olive tree, the letter folded in his pocket and the coin pressed in his palm, he didn't look back. But the moment he stepped outside the gate, a man in a suit stepped out of the shadows. Not a priest. Not a follower. Something else. He held a phone to his ear, watching Keanu walk away. He has the coin, the man said. A pause. Yes, Your Holiness. Phase 1 is complete. The silence before the storm. Keanu Reeves had always believed that silence was sacred. Not the silence of empty rooms or forgotten places, but the silence that followed truth. The kind that wrapped itself around you after something real had been spoken, after something painful had been heard. But as he boarded the private jet waiting at the edge of the Rome airfield, a jet he had not requested, a jet whose door had been left open as if expecting him, he began to realize this silence felt different. This was the silence before a storm. The kind that warned you without speaking. The kind that reached into your bones and asked, "Are you ready?" He sat down alone, the coin still heavy in his hand. The pouch was in his jacket, and the letter from his sister had not left his side since the garden. He had reread it a dozen times already, each line drawing a deeper ache in his chest. The pilot never introduced himself. The flight attendants didn't ask questions. They simply offered water and retreated, as if they too were part of this strange unfolding. The jet took off, smooth and without announcement. Keanu didn't know the destination. He hadn't asked. Something in him knew that whatever came next wasn't meant to be planned. The sky outside shifted from orange to deep blue, and soon night swallowed the clouds. Halfway through the flight, the screen in front of him flickered on without a button being pressed. A video began to play. No title, no sound, just footage. It showed a village, broken houses, flooded streets, children carrying jugs through knee-deep water. There were no logos, no narrators, just life. Real, struggling life. Then the camera shifted to a field hospital where nurses moved in silence, their hands trembling from exhaustion, yet their faces carrying calm. A young boy, no older than 10, reached out to one of them and gave her a piece of bread he had saved. She knelt down, tears in her eyes, and took the bread like it was gold. Keanu leaned forward. Something about the boy seemed familiar. And then the screen froze. The image paused on the boy's face, and that's when Keanu's heart stopped. On the boy's wrist was a thread bracelet. Red, green, and gold. The same one his sister had made, for children in the hospital during her final year. She had given out hundreds to kids fighting their own battles, calling them hope threads. She used to say, "When someone wears one, it means they carry your fight too." But this one had her initials woven into the fabric. How did this boy, this stranger in a forgotten part of the world, have her bracelet? Keanu stared at the screen, breath caught in his throat. The screen faded to black, and a message appeared in white. "You were never meant to keep your light to yourself." A soft chime rang through the cabin. The voice of the pilot came over the intercom, calm and low. "Mr. Reeves will be arriving in 30 minutes. Local authorities are waiting." "You've been expected." Keanu stood up slowly. "Where are we landing?" "Haiti," the pilot replied. "In a village called Belinois. They believe a man is coming to help restore their orphan center. They don't know who, just that he carries a coin of promise." Keanu didn't answer. He looked down at the coin in his hand and turned it over. It wasn't just metal. It was marked. Etched into one side was a tree, an olive tree. On the other side were the words, "Serve in silence, heal in truth." As the plane descended into the night, Keanu's mind swirled with questions. Why him? Why now? And what exactly did Robert Prevost want from him? But the moment the wheels touched the dirt runway, everything became clearer and darker. The tarmac was lit by lanterns. No flashing cameras, no press. Just a line of children holding candles and a group of nuns standing quietly. One of the women stepped forward and bowed her head. "You are the one they whispered about," she said. "The one who carries the coin." Keanu stepped off the stairs and looked at the children. They were barefoot. Their clothes were patched. But their eyes, they shone with something unexplainable. "I don't know if I'm the one," he said quietly. The woman smiled. "No one ever does, not until the moment arrives." He followed her through winding paths, past broken walls and water barrels. Finally, they reached a crumbling building, part church, part shelter. The roof was half torn, the beds were wooden planks, and the medical supplies were stacked in crates that hadn't been opened in months. "This was once a sanctuary," the woman explained, "until the floods came. And after that, the corruption." Keanu raised an eyebrow. "Corruption?" She nodded solemnly. "People who promised to help only to steal. Foreign investors, even some faith leaders. They took what they could and disappeared. But now hope has returned because someone whispered your name in the halls of faith." Keanu was silent. He looked around and saw a child asleep on a mat made of rice sacks. He looked at the cracked cross hanging on the wall, tilted, as if it too had grown tired. And then from the back of the room, a voice spoke, male, heavy with accent. "So, the actor comes to play savior." Keanu turned. A man in a dark uniform stepped from the shadows, armed, not military, private security. He had a patch on his jacket that read, Arcus Global. "This land was promised to us," the man said, coldly. "You're trespassing." Keanu looked at the nun. She didn't flinch. "He's with the Vatican," she whispered. "They don't like that." Keanu stepped forward, calm. "I'm not here to take sides, just to help," the man sneered. "Help? With what? Your smile?" And before Keanu could answer, the man reached out and grabbed the coin from his hand. He looked at it, confused, then frightened. "Where did you get this?" he demanded. "It was given to me," Keanu said quietly. The man backed away like he had touched fire. "This coin belongs to the Whisper." "The Whisper," Keanu repeated. The man didn't answer. Instead, he turned and ran into the dark. Keanu stood frozen, heart pounding. He looked down at his now empty hand. Whatever this was, it had just become much bigger than him. The man behind the Whisper. The night in Belenoir pressed down like a secret, thick with heat, thicker with silence. Keanu Reeves stood at the edge of the orphan shelter, his hand still tingling where the coin had once been. The man from Arcus. Global had vanished into the darkness, but the fear in his eyes hadn't left Keanu's mind. He hadn't feared Keanu, he had feared the coin. And more than that, he had feared what it meant. The Whisper. The name had been spoken like a warning, not a title. And now Keanu was left holding nothing but questions. Inside, the children slept. Their breaths rose and fell like small waves. The nun, whose name was Sister Claire, placed a warm hand on his shoulder. "You've walked into a war without bullets," she said softly. "But the wounds are deeper than gunshots." Keanu sat on a wooden bench outside the shelter, watching fireflies blink across the distant hills. Sister Claire brought him a cup of tea made from roots she had gathered. It tasted bitter, but grounding. "What? Is Arcus global?" he finally asked. Claire looked away. "They came promising power, roads, medicine. They brought machines and men and banners with cross-shaped logos. But they did not come to build. They came to mine." "Mine?" Keanu asked. "Not gold, not oil, something worse. They take influence. They dig into hearts. They sponsor shadows. They buy silence with favors. And when they learned we had land, they offered us a deal too good to be true, so we signed. And they started tearing the heart out of our home." Keanu rubbed his forehead, the weight of it settling in. Why haven't they been stopped? Because they're protected, by men in suits, by leaders who claim to pray, and by those who sell righteousness for control. Keanu felt something rise inside him, not anger, not yet, but a deep unrest, a knowing. This wasn't just a broken village, this was a front line, and somehow, the coin had drawn him into the middle of it. A voice behind them made them both turn. "I told him not to bring you yet." A man stood at the edge of the lantern light. Older, with skin like dark oak and eyes like sharpened glass. His clothes were clean but simple, his boots worn by years, not months. He stepped forward with a slight limp, his right hand tucked into his coat. Claire stood. "Monsieur Dion." Keanu rose slowly. "Who are you?" The man stopped a few steps. "Away." "The one who whispered." Keanu blinked. "You?" he said. "You're the Whisper?" The man nodded. "A name given, not chosen. By people who needed hope, but didn't want it to come with a face. I helped move things, protect the voices who could not speak, write letters that could not be traced, sometimes to priests, sometimes to rebels, sometimes to men like you." Keanu stepped forward. "Then you sent the letter to my hotel?" "No," Dion said. That came from Robert, but I told him when to send it. Keanu sat again, overwhelmed. Why me? Dion knelt slowly beside the bench. Because you're not just famous, you're trusted. You don't carry a title, but you carry truth. And the truth is, this village is the first of many. Arcus has a plan, and it leads far beyond Haiti. Keanu looked into the man's eyes. What plan? To install their vision across vulnerable lands, Dion said. Under the mask of charity, under the blessing of false prophets, they are building a network, digital, spiritual, political. They want control that looks like kindness. Keanu's mind raced. So what do you need from me? Dion pulled something from his coat. A small black book, bound in wire. Names, dates, signed contracts, recorded conversations. All of it copied. The original is with someone else. If Arcus finds this, they will erase everything. But if the world sees it, if someone trusted brings it forward, their walls will fall. Keanu took the book with both hands. It felt heavier than any script he had ever read. So why don't you go public? Dion looked away. Because they already tried to kill me once. He unbuttoned his shirt, revealing a scar that ran across his chest like a brand. And because I'm not the one people will believe. I was a smuggler once. I've seen the dark. They'll say I forged it all. But you walk into rooms that won't open for anyone else. You speak and people stop to listen. Keanu stared at the book. This was bigger than a mission. It was a calling. And in that moment, the sound of distant engines rumbled through the hills. Claire gasped. They're coming back. Dion's face darkened. They must have tracked the coin. Keanu stood, heart thudding. Then we have to move. Dion grabbed his arm. Wait, not you, not yet. He pointed toward a narrow tunnel behind the shelter. Take the book. Follow the tunnel to the hill. At the top, there's a small church, abandoned. But someone will be waiting. Who? Keanu asked. Someone who still believes in redemption, Dion said. Before Keanu could respond, the sound of tires skidding and boots hitting gravel filled the air. Flashlights cut through the dark, and then came the voice, cold and clear. Bring him to us, and bring the book. Dion shoved Keanu toward the tunnel. Go, now. Keanu ran into the shadows, clutching the book like a flame he had to keep alive. Behind him, he heard a single gunshot, and then nothing. The man in the ruined chapel, the tunnel was barely wide enough for Keanu to walk upright. The walls were carved from stone and damp earth, and the smell of old rain and dust filled his lungs as he moved forward with slow, deliberate steps. Behind him, the echo of the gunshot rang in his mind like a church bell tolling for the dead. Dion had pushed him to safety without hesitation, without fear. And now Keanu didn't know if the man who called himself the Whisper was still breathing. His heart wanted to turn back, but the book in his hands told him to keep moving. This was no longer about what was fair. This was about what was right. The path twisted, then opened into a narrow staircase carved into the hill. Keanu climbed with aching legs, his breath short but steady. He passed broken roots and remnants of old candles burned down to their base. At the top, he emerged into the night. The stars above were endless and undisturbed, as if untouched by what had just unfolded below. The village was far behind him now, lights flickering like distant prayers, and ahead stood a crumbling stone chapel, half swallowed by vines and time. Keanu stepped through the broken doors. Inside, moonlight poured through a gaping hole in the roof, casting silver shadows on the cracked floor. The pews were splintered, some missing entirely, and the altar was bare. No cross, no candle, just dust and a memory of faith. He waited. The silence was deep, almost holy. And then, from the far corner, a figure rose from the dark. She was older than he expected, with eyes like burning coals and skin lined with wisdom. She wore no robes, no symbols, only a plain shawl wrapped tight around her shoulders. She stepped forward slowly, her cane tapping softly against the floor. "You made it," she said. "Good. Who are you?" Keanu asked. "My name was Mother Elena. Now I am only what remains." She walked past him, touching the wall as she moved, as if drawing strength from the stones. "I once led a mission here," she said. "Before Arcus came. Before they poisoned everything they touched. They closed the schools, turned churches into offices, and offered medicine laced with dependence. When I spoke out, they erased me, labeled me delusional, forced me into hiding." Keanu stepped closer, holding the book tightly. "Dion said you believe in redemption." Mother Elena turned, her face fierce. "I believe in truth, and truth has no place in comfort. It burns, it scars, but it purifies. That's why they fear it." She took the book gently from his hands, opening it with the reverence of someone handling scripture. This is enough to start a fire they can't contain," she whispered. "But only if the world sees it." Keanu's voice was low. "That's what Dion wanted. He said people would believe me." Mother Elena nodded. "And they will. But only if you survive long enough to speak." Just then, a soft vibration buzzed in Keanu's pocket. It was the emergency phone Robert Prevost had slipped into the lining of the pouch, hidden until now. Keanu pulled it out. There was only one message on the screen. "They know you have it. Trust no one, not even the church. Deliver it to the shepherd's stair." Keanu looked up. "What is the shepherd's stair?" "Mother," Elena's eyes widened. "You weren't supposed to know about that." "What is it?" he repeated. "A secret passage beneath the old Vatican library," she said slowly. "Used centuries ago to move messages during the war. It leads to the papal vault, where truths were buried before they could threaten power." Keanu's breath caught. "You're saying the Vatican has its own hidden truths?" Mother Elena gave a sad smile. "Every place that claims to save souls has also failed them. Even the holy ones." She handed the book back to him and placed her hand over his. "This time, don't bury the truth. Deliver it." Just then, headlights flashed through the broken stained glass. Tires skidded on gravel. A black van pulled up outside. Armed men spilled out like oil, dressed in Arcus gear, scanning the chapel with green lights and rifles. "Mother," Elena didn't flinch. "There's a back door through the sacristy," she whispered. "Follow the path. Take the boy." "What boy?" Before she could answer, a young child ran into the chapel from the back, barefoot, scared, holding something in his hand. Keanu's heart stopped. The bracelet, red, green, and gold. His sister's hope thread. The same boy from the video. Mother Elena placed her cane on the floor. "He's the reason they want to erase this village," she said. "He saw something he shouldn't have. And now he carries not just memory, but proof." Keanu took the boy's hand. The soldiers began shouting outside. Mother Elena looked at Keanu, her voice steady. "You have what they fear. Now, go and make the world listen." Keanu pulled the boy close and ran toward the back of the chapel. Outside, gunshots shattered the night. But inside him something had changed. He was no longer running from something. He was running toward something, bigger than he had ever known. The truth that shook the throne. The path behind the chapel twisted like a scar through the jungle. Keanu Reeves held the boy tightly, their steps fast and silent as gunshots echoed behind them. The child's breath was sharp and quick, but his grip didn't loosen. He never cried, not once. His silence was not fear, it was knowing, like he understood that the weight of what he carried could not be wasted on panic. Moonlight filtered through the branches above, casting patterns on the dirt. Trail like broken glass. Keanu's legs ached, his lungs burned, but he didn't stop. Not until they reached the edge of a dirt road where a battered Jeep sat hidden behind tall grass and fallen palm leaves. The keys were already in the ignition. A note rested on the seat. Drive north. Follow the stone markers. Do not stop for anyone. There was no signature, but Keanu knew who had left it. Mother Elena, or someone she trusted. He started the engine and pulled onto the road, the wheels kicking up dust into the night. The boy sat beside him, clutching the hope thread bracelet like it was a shield. As they drove, Keanu opened the black book one last time. The pages were filled with names, bishops, executives, politicians, signed documents showing the movement of money, the manipulation of orphanages, the selling of land under the guise of charity. The voice recordings, stored on a tiny chip hidden in the book's spine, were even worse. Men speaking casually about suppressing witnesses, staging violence, replacing medicines with expired drugs. It was not just corruption. It was cruelty, systemized, and it reached into places that wore crosses around their necks. By dawn, they reached the outskirts of Port-au-Prince. A small plane waited on a private runway guarded by two men dressed like farmers, their rifles hidden beneath baskets of bananas. They said nothing. They just waved him on. As the plane lifted into the sky, Keanu looked down at Haiti. This wounded, burning land that had offered him more truth than any studio or interview ever had. He looked at the boy beside him, who had now fallen asleep with his head against Keanu's arm. And then he looked at the sky ahead. Rome was calling. The shepherds. Stair was not on any map. It was a legend. A rumor passed through the mouths of old scholars and disillusioned clergy. It lay beneath the Vatican's forgotten library, behind a false wall and down a spiral staircase that hadn't seen sunlight in over a century. Robert Prevost was waiting, not in robes, not with ceremony. Just a simple coat and tired eyes. He embraced Keanu the moment he arrived. "I feared you wouldn't make it," he whispered. "Dion didn't," Keanu replied. Robert's face fell. "I know. We lost more than a man. We lost a witness." "Then let's make his voice louder than ever," Keanu said. They descended the stair together, the boy still sleeping in Keanu's arms. The corridor below was cold and lined with relics, old scrolls, cracked mosaics, forgotten truths locked. Away by fear and power, in a chamber lit by gaslight, a camera waited. Not for press, not for performance, for confession. Robert sat beside Keanu. "We will not speak as pope and actor," he said. "We will speak as men who have failed to remain silent." Keanu nodded, placing the black book on the table. "Then let's begin." The video was uploaded at midnight, on an anonymous server with fail-safes and mirrored backups. It showed nothing flashy, no drama, just two men speaking truthfully, with eyes that had seen too much. Keanu read the names. He showed the documents. He played the recordings. He never raised his voice. He never pointed blame. He just told the truth. And the world shattered. Within hours, the video had reached 50 million views. Within days, the church was forced to respond. Officials were suspended, investigations launched, charities cut ties, and the name Arcus Global became toxic across the world. But the real revolution wasn't in the fallout. It was in the awakening. People across nations began asking questions, demanding transparency, opening their own churches, orphanages, shelters, not in the name of brands or banners, but in the name of decency, kindness, love. Keanu refused interviews. He refused awards. He returned to Belenoir months later, walking into the same chapel that had once been cracked and crumbling. Now it stood tall, rebuilt stone by stone. The boy, now named Simon, ran to him with a new bracelet, woven from the hands of the other children. Keanu took it, tears in his eyes. Mother Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. "Truth," she said softly, "always returns. And when it does, it chooses voices like yours." Keanu smiled faintly. "I'm not a prophet," he said. "No," she replied, You're something harder to find." "What's that?" She looked into his eyes. A man who kept his promise. And somewhere in the silence, as bells rang across the valley and children laughed freely once again, the whisper echoed through the world, this time not in secret, not in fear, but in hope.